Hello, everybody. My name is Kyle Lee, aka Kilo Loco from kiloloco.com, and today we are going to be going over URLSession, specifically JSON Get and POST requests. The tools that I'm going to be using today are Xcode 8.2.1 and Swift 3. And I have marked this tutorial to be at the beginner skill level because I'm gonna be going over it's a pretty straightforward concept, and I'm gonna be going over every line that I type in for you guys to understand. What this tutorial will not be is how to parse the JSON that we get back. I'm just gonna be printing it to the logs. But I do have a video if you want to know how to parse the JSON. This is just more of how to access API and get the data into your environment. Moving forward with this tutorial, you're just going to need to know the Swift language basics, and then just kind of have any idea of what callbacks and completion handlers are or how they work. Just so that you can log that data and not be confused on what's happening. So let's go ahead and get into it. Also, I wanted to disclose this right away. If you are looking for a specific tutorial, this tutorial is going to be, like I said, JSON post and get a request. This is not for multi-part form data. So if that's what you're looking for, I'll be doing a video on that next week. So be on the lookout for that. But this is just basic URL sessions, just the simple stuff. All right, so let's go ahead and open up a new project. I'm also not in my garage this time, so my computer shouldn't stopping. There shouldn't be any interruptions in your video when you're watching this. So I'm gonna call this URL session, and then we'll do JSON requests. And as always, sorry for the dogs or the kids that you hear throughout this tutorial. And we are going to put this right on the desk. No, we'll do it in KL Learning, actually, because that's where I'm going to be doing my source. I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm going to be putting this up on GitHub, so that's where this is going to be, and this is where I put all my stuff. So let's do it here. I'm like off my game today, guys. All right, so the first thing I'm going to start off with is just the main storyboard. Just get 2 buttons going. I'm going to be using buttons to do the different types of requests. So let's get that going. Just 2 of them. And this will be get, and this will be post. Very simple, very straightforward, nothing fancy. Storyboards, stack views are a little bit fancy, right? But other than that, nothing really fancy. Gotta align them to center, make them look pretty. We want to space them out. Let's go ahead and put 30 spacing. Let's do 50 spacing. Yeah, that's fine. That's all we need. All right, let's clear this out. Connect them. Keep getting bigger fonts for you guys so that make sure that you can see everything that's going on. And this is going to be an what is this? Nope, not what I wanted. See, it's trying to do the stack view. I want to make sure that I get the button, so I'll do it from here instead. And we want this to be an action, so this is going to be on get tapped. And do the same thing over here. On post tapped. Right. All set right there. Going back over to view controller, and we're ready to go, guys. This is all we need to get going. Okay, so we're going to start off with the get. It's very easy, very simple, and very straightforward. All we have to do is create a URL, and you creating a URL generally gives you an optional URL. So what we'll do is we'll put in a guard statement, guard let URL equals URL, and we're going to be making it from a string, and else return. Alright, so the actual URL I'm going to show you guys how to get there. So let's bring up Safari, that's my browser of choice, and I'm going to go to Google. And all you have to do to follow along is just do this, or you can get the source code from GitHub. But all I'm going to do is type in JSON placeholder. That's all I'm going to do, this one right here. It's going to be the first one at the top, jsonplaceholder.com, typicode.com, or JSON, whatever. You guys saw it. You know what I'm saying. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, the URL, put it up in there, and then we're actually going to be doing a GET request. So let's just go ahead and do users. As you can see, the different routes, what they recommend. So if you want to do a GET request, we could do any of these. I'm just going to do this first one, keep it simple. Well, I wanted to do users. Let's do users, keep it simple. It's the same thing, but yeah. Alright, and then we just type in, we just paste it right there. This is all you really have to do is just get your API endpoint and you're done. Well, not done, but yeah. So next, what we're going to do is we have to create a session using URLSession. So let session equal URLSession dot shared. And then from this session, what we're going to do, we're going to type in session.dataTask. Oops, let me go back over this. I'm just so used to doing it. So we're going to do data task. And since what we can do is we want to do one of these ones with the completion handler, because we want to be able to parse the data out and do whatever we want with it. So as you can see right here, you can do a data task with a URL, or you can do a data task with the URL request. All we need to do for your basic get, where you don't need to pass in any parameters or anything like that, you just hit your endpoint and it's going to give you the information that you want, is just do the data task with URL. Just keeping it simple. URLSession is defaulted to get, and you don't have to do any extra work, so it automatically goes out and does a get request. So we're going to type in URL. And for the completion handler, just go ahead and let me make this a little bit bigger so that we can get everything on one line. We're going to go ahead and press enter. And for data, we'll just call this data. For the URL response, we'll just go ahead and call that response. Keeping it simple. We could call it whatever we want. Error. We could call this, poop, if we wanted to call poop. So, yeah. And as you saw, we have to also do optional chaining with these, just to make sure that there is a value inside them, or else they can be nil. So what we're going to do is we're going to do if data, or actually let's get the response back, because we want to make sure that the response was successful. So we'll do if response, or we have to do if let, I'm sorry, like I said, I'm off my game today. If let response is equal to response, then what we are going to do is we're going to print our response, and it'll give us something that's fairly readable, all the information that you're really going to need, and that's all we have to do to see what the response was. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to want to see the data, and we could call this anything that we want. We could call it potatoes. I don't know how to spell potatoes right now, guys. This is crazy. I am so off. I'm sorry. Let's just go back to data, call this error. Like I said, they could be called whatever you want. And then optional chaining. So if let data is equal to data. Then we're gonna go ahead and do some stuff in here. Now we can't just print out data, because what it will do, well actually let me just print out that data for you so that you can see what's actually coming back. And to finish this, you actually have to call, you actually have to call .resume. If you do not call .resume, it will not call this task. Nothing will happen. You'll just go through and nothing will happen. Also, if you ended up doing something like this instead, URLSession, .shared, and let's say we did we wanted to do let session equals this, right? Let's say you did something like that, which is fine. It looks a little bit uglier, but notice that you can't do .resume right here, right? So you can't do it right here. So what you'll actually have to do is do session .resume down here. So that's just a little heads up depending on whatever your coding style is. I prefer to do it like this, but that's just something that I ran into that I think would be helpful for you to know. So there we go. I think we're back to normal. Let's go ahead and run this. I'd like to keep it on the SE. And we should be able to see what happens. It's going to pop up over here because this is full screen. So yeah, going back over it, just getting the URL, creating a URL session, getting the data task with that URL. It's going to go through, check our response, print the response. If there's anything, it's also going to go through, check the data, print the data if there's anything. So when I press get and I go back over there, let's see, it didn't seem to work. There we go. So let's pull this bad boy up. So this is the response. So the top part, all this jumbled stuff up here, this is all the response. Now you don't really need this, but it's helpful for this part right here to check your status code. And a status code of 200 is going to indicate that it was successful. So 200, anything in between 200 and 300, 200 to 299 is exactly, that's generally a good response. If you got something like 400, then that means that it was a bad call. So you didn't do something right. So if I go ahead and do this, where it's called looking for URLs, instead of users, then I'm going to get a bad call and I'm going to get a 404. I'm sure that you have seen something like this on websites and web pages when you go to a weird spot in the website and you get like this 404 image saying website not found or page not found or something like that. So that's usually what happens. Well, not this exactly, but it's essentially the same thing. When you type it in wrong, you get that 404 missing page response. So let's go ahead and put that back. And also, as you can see down here, 2 bytes. Before it was like 5,000 something bytes. Like I said, the data is not going to come in as a readable format. So what we have to do is to put it into a readable format, assuming that whatever response that we have is coming back as JSON, is that we actually have to convert this data into JSON data. See, 5,645 bytes. So what we're going to do, as opposed to reading it in bytes, because that doesn't help anybody, is we're going to put this in a do try block. So go ahead and do try, and we are going to convert it to JSON. So let JSON equal, and this is a call that throws, so we have to do try JSON serialization dot data. And since we are reading, we want to be able to read it. We're not making it, so we're not writing it. We want to read this. That's how I remember it. We're going to choose reading options, right? and we're with data. We don't have an input stream, so we're doing data. So make sure you choose this one. And then we're going to pass in our data, as one would expect. And we are actually just going to close this off right here. We don't have to put anything. You could put mutable containers that just lets you modify some of the actual JSON that came in, but you hardly ever need to do that because you have to parse it anyways. But yeah, just pass in this blank array or argument or whatever, and that will give you your JSON. So if we go ahead and try to print, and it's giving me an error right now because I forgot to do the catch block down here. Xcode can be kind of weird, so let's just print that error, the standard error that's going to come from trying to do this. And if we go ahead and run it, and you know what, I'm actually going to put this all on the same screen and just make the screen a little bit bigger so that you guys can see everything happening on the same page. And we don't need any of this over here. Alright, where's my simulator? Right here. Alright, so we're going to do the get response. And bam, we have our JSON. Look at that. Isn't it beautiful? It's still printing the data right here, but this is the actual JSON that it's printing. We can see that it's coming in as an array, and array of dictionaries, because each of these are dictionaries and they all have the same format, which is good JSON. You have an array of dictionaries that are all formatted the same way, so you can essentially parse through them properly. I won't go through the parsing. This is all you really need to know how to do, to access an API and then get the data back. And that's with get. All right, so it's very simple. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. Only a few lines of code. Most of it's just the do try block and the catch block and all that other stuff. But everything else, like, this isn't necessary. You don't need to check the response really. It's just helpful if you don't know what's going on. So yeah, that's all you really have to do. Now the post is a little bit different. It's overall the same, but but like I said, it is a little bit different. You have to do a couple more steps, and let's go through that right now. So we're gonna start off the same. I'm not gonna make URL up there as a global variable. I just want to go through everything from scratch. So let's do all the same things. Guard let URL equal URL, and we're doing it from a string once again. And we already know that we want this as our endpoint, but we're not going to do the users because we're not posting users, right? So let's go back to our website, and for a post request they say use posts, which plural. So we'll just go ahead and copy that. I could have typed it in probably faster than I would have copied it, but whatever. That's what happens when you watch my tutorials, is I do stuff that is not really necessary. Alright, anyway, so remember how we did the data task with a URL? This time with post requests, you have to do them with, what's going on here? Yeah, Xcode stripping. You have to do them with URL requests. You can't just do it with a URL because there's stuff that you have to put in the request body. And in order to do that, you have to be able to access the request. So let's make a request. So let request equal URL request, and everything's pretty named very simply for you guys. We're just going to use this top one, URL. We don't need to go into cache policy or anything like that, really. This just gives you more control over your request. Like, you could choose the cache policy, like if you want to save certain things, like if you know that they're going to be constantly calling an API just to get the same thing, the cache policy will make it easier for you, as well as the timeout interval. I believe it's set to 60 seconds by standard, maybe 30 seconds, but you can change the timeout interval if you're expecting things to be either faster or slower. But for this basic example, we're just going to go ahead and move forward with the URL. So let's go ahead and pass in the URL right here. And then, as you can remember, we're just going to make the session just like normal. But we have to add a couple of things to our request. So the first thing the first thing that we're going to want to do is actually we're going to want to add that it's a post request. So go ahead and get your request. We're going to do HTTP method, and we're going to set it to post. That will let the URL session know that we are doing a post request. And then next, what we have to do is usually we want to pass in some parameters. So let's also do parameters. What's going on here? Oh, it's a variable. I don't know why I did let. Usually when you do posts, I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the place. Like I said, I'm not on my game today. But usually when you do a post request, you want to pass in some parameters. So let's go ahead and set in some parameters. So let's do let parameters. Usually these are, dynamic. You're going to want to get them from a field or something like that. But I'm going to do a dictionary of parameters. And we'll keep it simple. So let's say this was like Twitter or something. You wanted to do a tweet, right? And you would normally have something like the username, right? And it would be your username, and then you would have your tweet, and that would be like your message, whatever you want to say, like hello world tweeting. Yeah. So these would generally be like some type of parameters. You can have as many as you want, but they would generally be coming in as a dictionary. You'd have like username would be set depending on whatever the API requires you to pass to it. But the actual value that you would put in here would come from something like your text field. You would type into your text field and put in Kilo Loco, and maybe you add the @ before it or something like that. So that's kind of the mentality that you'd be working with URL sessions in real life. I'm not going to go into all that. I just wanted to show how this is going to work. Next thing that we want to do is set the HTTP body to something. And what we're going to do is we're going to have to turn these parameters into JSON. So let me show you how that's going to work. So let our HTTP body, you could call this whatever once again, and we are going to do JSON serialization, and this is going to be data, and this time we're actually going to be writing it. We have to create the JSON. We have to turn this into JSON, so we want to do the writing options, right? And we are going to pass in our parameters. As you can see, it's taking any. So we're going to pass in our parameters. And for this, once again, this could just be blank. You don't really need it to be anything special. But you'll notice that we're getting an error, and that's because JSON serialization, the data, it's a throwing function. So what we have to do is we have to mark it with try. And I'm not going to put in a do try block because we have to do another do try block later. So I'm just going to do a guard right here. And that's optional chaining. We can keep it as a question mark in case it doesn't work. And we can still move forward with our HTTP body. All right, and now we want to set our HTTP body to the actual request body, so the HTTP body. So let's go ahead and HTTP body is equal to our HTTP body, which we can see is data. All right, so we're almost there, guys. Now we actually want to make our session just like last time. Equal URL session, and let's just stop this and get this stuff out of the way. I don't like the way this looks. Hold on, I like it to be a little bit more centered. There we go. URL session dot shared, just like last time. Same old stuff. Session, and we're still going to do a data task, But this time, instead of doing the URL like we did last time with the completion handler, we're going to be using our request, our URL request with a completion handler. And we're just going to pass in our request. And we're just going to go ahead and press enter on this completion block. And once again, call it whatever you would like. Just going to go with the standard. And we're going to print it out the same way that we did before. Right? All this code is essentially going to be reproduced, but I don't like to copy and paste if I don't have to. It'd be easier because we're going to be doing the same exact thing, but it's good. It's good practice. It helps me practice. So if let response equal response, then what we're going to do is print our response, and that's going to give us that block to let us know like the status codes and things like that, what kind of methods that we're calling, what's being sent, and all that, those types of things. If let data equal data, we're going to go ahead and remember we can't just print the data because it'll give us the bytes, and we don't want the bytes, we want something that's readable. So we'll put it in this do try block because we have to do the JSON serialization. And before Xcode blows up, let's go ahead and print out our standard error that's going to be coming from our JSON serialization. So let JSON equal try JSON serialization dot and this time, once again, we're going to be reading this data, not like before where we were writing the data. We want to do the reading options. Oops, wrong one. I chose input stream, but since width is the same, and it's just an overloaded thing, we could just go ahead and pass in the data anyway. And the reading options, just leave them blank. That's fine. That'll work. And then what we want to do is print our JSON. All right, so that's pretty much all we have to do. Just remember that when we do a session with data tests, we always have to call .resume. You got it. Bam. All right. So this is actually going to give us a weird result. And I want you guys to see that because there's a few things that I left out, but this is the very basics that you need to do a post request with JSON, that is. So now we're going to do our post. All right, so we got a status code of 201. Remember that anything in between 200 and 299 essentially means good, that it worked. And we got this, so we have ID equals to 101, and if you're familiar with JSON at all, you know that this does not look right. See, because if we try to parse this, right, you know, it just wouldn't work because we have ID, which is a string, and this technically looks like a string, but there's a value to it, you know, so this is the key and this is the value. So what's going on with that, right? So the reason for that is because we're sending up, let's see, where is it? So right here in the HTTP body, right? We're sending up JSON, and we're setting that as the body. But the problem is that the API does not know what it's trying to accept. It just knows that it's getting this information. It doesn't know if it's JSON, if it's XML, if it's just a bunch of strings. It doesn't know what is coming into it. So we actually have to let the API know, hey, we're sending up JSON. So in order for you to do that, we have to go back into our requests, and we have to add one more line. So request, and we're going to do add value. And as you can see, we're going to be putting a value right here for HTTP header fields. So these are our HTTP header fields down here, as you can see. We have to specify what kind of content type that we want to send to it. So what we'll do is we're going to say we are going to be sending you, we're going to just to do application, we're going to be sending you JSON. right? And the application JSON is going to be set for the content type. Right? So now, since our request has added this value to the content type, it will know that we're sending up JSON. And let's see what happens when we run this again. I purposely wanted to miss out on this step, because what will happen is if you go through and try to implement this yourself and you're sending it up to the API and you're just not sure what's going on, why things are coming back weird or something like that, this will probably be your problem. So now if we do the post and look at that beautiful JSON, just as we would expect it. You know, we have the ID is equal to 101. Our tweet is equal to hello world, just as we typed it. Username is also equal to @KiloLoco. So that's all we really need to do, guys. For your post requests, that's it. It's very simple, very straightforward. There's no magic to it. You don't necessarily need to use things like Alamofire because you don't understand it. This is all you really have to do. Just a couple of lines. What is that? 30 lines? Less? I mean, look at how simple it is, how straightforward it is. URLSessions has become very easy to implement. Both get is even smaller. Look at this, 14, 20 lines. 20 lines to really do it. So it's really easy to use your own thinking. You don't have to import a whole new framework just to do your networking requests. There is there's something lacking to URLSessions, which is doing multi-part form data. And like I said, I didn't want to go over that today, but I'll be doing a video for you guys next week. But if you wanted to do just something basic and get up and running with APIs and test out some of these awesome APIs, like, let me just show you real quick. There's awesome APIs like there's a Pokemon API, which you're probably really familiar with because awesome courses like DevSlope's course goes over that. But they go over it with Alamofire, and there's kind of some mystery behind what's happening. So now you could kind of go out and test using these APIs, sending these endpoints that they give you. There's also a Star Wars API, which I think is also really cool. It's called Swappy. You get things like, look at Luke Skywalker, his height, his mass, things, really crazy, awesome stuff. So go out there and experiment with some of these APIs, and they all take JSON, which is the amazing thing. And you could just make some really cool apps, parse this data, throw it into a table view, and that's something that's right there for your portfolio. So I'm gonna go ahead and close this. And last time I forgot to show you that I am going to be pushing this up to my GitHub. So I want to make sure I do that for you guys. I already made the repo for it, but obviously there's nothing in it right now. And this is just good practice, just to show you guys if you don't really understand how to use Git. So all we're gonna do, yours is obviously gonna look extremely different from mine. What we're gonna do is we're gonna change directories into my desktop, and then I call this one KiloLoco Learning, or KL Learning. And then let's see what I have in here. URLSession JSON, so I'm gonna change directory into that. And git clone. No. Git. What am I doing? I'm sorry. Init. And we are going to get remote add origin and paste that into there. Git pull origin master and type in my password. And we're gonna add them all. URL session get and post requests requests. And let me specify JSON because once again, multi-part form data is different. Get push origin master. All right. So whenever you watch this video, if you just want to see how I implemented the code, it'll be up here at this URL, and the link will be in the description. So you have full access for that. All right, guys. I hope that this tutorial was informative. I try to go over it for beginners. This is a very straightforward topic, so I would only imagine that somebody that doesn't really have experience with URL sessions is probably watching this tutorial, which is why I broke it down so in depth, and even some of the easier things I wanted to go over in detail. Just try to be as thorough as possible. But yeah, once again, my name is Kyle Lee, aka Kilo Loco from kiloloco.com. And feel free to reach out to me if you want to see any tutorials on any specific subjects in Swift. I would love to do that. Also, if you live in the LA area, I am going to be hosting meetups more regularly. You can look for my actual meetup group. Let's go over to that right now. It's called Applied Swift Foothills. Right here. You can go ahead and join my meetup. I'm going to be scheduling meetups more often. So if you want to join us for Applied Swift, it's going to be about all things Swift, and it's going to be project based. So whenever we do meetups, we're going to be building a project that we could essentially, get up and running, and then hopefully you can make it a little bit prettier on your own time, and then make it part of your portfolio. Maybe upload it to the App Store. But yeah, you can join here if you're interested in that. You could tweet me on Twitter at kilo_loco. And yeah, just keep in touch. And thank you for watching the video. And as always, code passionately, guys. All right.